Hurst back to Clyde, best to hit one, and a goal! There was a deflection, but it's a goal, and it must go to Clyde Best.
Dan Lawless here, West Ham Fan TV, and it is my honour and privilege to be joined by an absolute West Ham legend, trailblazer, Clyde Best, MB. Clyde, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Honour to talk to you. Obviously, we've got to be on the back of seeing that great Man United win, which I hope to talk to you about a bit later on. But first, we've got so much to talk about with your career, your historic career. I mean, there's no better place to start than at the beginning. Right. Being a young player from Bermuda. Just tell me a bit about how you came to join West Ham. Because back then, scouting systems and networks weren't as vast and detailed as they are today. So how did that come about?
Well, I was pretty blessed and fortunate. West Ham got me through my national team coach, who was Graham Adams, who had done some coaching courses either with Ron Greenwood or Ron done it, put on the coaching courses. And he made arrangements for a trial. Ron said yes, sent me a letter to make sure that it was sealed, and I came over. But I think Phil Woosnam probably had something to do with it too, because Phil Woosnam was commissioner of the North American Soccer League, and we would go to America sometimes to play games against different teams in New York. So he probably had something to do with that too, being an ex-player and international for Wales and being the commissioner. Yeah. So I'm sure those two who were the two that convinced Ron to give me a trial.
Brilliant. And he did. And talking about, you arriving in England, it was said that you flew over 17 years old, no one there to greet you at the airport.
That's right.
Must have been a daunting experience. Tell me about that experience just first coming over and arriving in England.
Well, the first time I came, as I said, was nobody there to meet me, and it was a bit disappointment in the sense because I didn't know where to go, and good job I had enough common sense to ask questions, and people, led me in the right direction, and I was able to catch a bus from Heathrow to Charing Cross. From Charing Cross, I took the Underground, and people on the Underground told me which way to go, and I got all the way up to West Ham, thinking that was the stop.
Yeah.
Come to find out it wasn't the stop. I had to get off at Upton Park. And I was at West Ham station, and I must say it's a glorious station now compared to what it was when I was there. I mean, I couldn't believe when I came out yesterday to do a shoot, and I saw it. I was practically lost because it was so much had changed in that area.
Yeah, and it's all been quite recent the past few years.
It was unbelievable, and that's for the better. I mean, and I'm glad of that, But as I said, I got to up on West Ham Station, and a gentleman saw me hanging around, and he asked me, it was getting late, Sonny, what are you doing waiting here like this time of night? I said, look, I'm supposed to be coming over for a trial for West Ham. And, I think I got off the wrong station. He said, yeah, you did. By the way, West Ham played yesterday, which was a Saturday, because we didn't play on Sundays in those years. And he said, well, they played yesterday, and the players, would be off today because it's a Sunday. He said, but it's a family across the park that I know of, and that was the Charles family, Jess Charles, and John and Clive's mom, who both played for West Ham. Clive and I were in the same youth team together. And he said, I'll take you over there. And we went, knocked on the door, and I know she was probably a bit startled, so this big guy at the door with this little white guy, and she took me in.
So you didn't have anywhere planned to stay initially?
No.
Okay. So I thought that was prearranged. So you went there, but you didn't know where you'd be staying.
No.
And that was by chance.
And by chance, and it worked. And she took us in, and I was supposed to stay a couple of days. I ended up staying about 6 years, between 4 and 6 years with her. And it was a great home away from home because she was brilliant, and she made sure Clive and I done everything we had to do to get to the top, you know, and I would always be indebted to that family because they treated me like I was one of their own, and brothers and sisters. And as a matter of fact, just the other day, I went out to see Clive and John's sister Rita, and when I looked, the whole house was packed with the whole grandchildren, great-grandchildren that are living today, you know, so we had a wonderful time on, it was Wednesday or Thursday, and, you know, as I said, there's my sisters and nieces and brothers, and, you know, it was just great to see them all, and, you know, we had a nice time there.
You know, yeah, and I want to ask you a little bit more about the Charles family a bit later on, but, you know, I want to ask you a bit about arriving at West Ham. So we was on the back of England winning the World Cup.
That's right.
Bobby Moore, Geoff Hurst, Martin Peters. You know, what was your sort of awareness and understanding of West Ham, and you know, what did it mean for you, that opportunity? Was it quite daunting, or, you know, what was your sort of knowledge of West Ham?
Well, I mean, I remember sitting with my brother in '64 watching the FA Cup, and it was West Ham and Preston North End. And he told me, I said to him, you know, one day I'm going to play for that team.
Wow.
And lo and behold, look what has happened, you know. I was able to do that, you know, and watching the '66 World Cup, that made me wanted to do it more, because when I looked at the players, Martin, Bobby, and Geoff, I had a good friend of mine. We went to the same school, and we were on the school team and a club team in Somerset. And I was Geoff Hurst, and he was Martin Peters. So when we were training, those are the two names we would learn and try to emulate, you know, what we saw them do. And it meant a lot, because here's a little fella coming from Bermuda, and eventually was in the same team as the 3 World Cup players. Yeah. I was over the moon, you know.
And you being Geoff Hurst, you know, you had quite a bit of partnership with Geoff.
Yes, Geoff and I played together, and as I said, he was a great partner to have. He understood the game, and all of them would give you information on things to do. I'll never forget, once we played at Middlesbrough. I think it was in the FA Cup, and I had decent pace for a big fella, and I went through the middle 3 times, and Martin picked me up out each time, but I was too fast, and I was offside every time. And Martin, I tell you what, I would always remember him. He came to me and he said, Clyde, the way to beat the offside trap is not to run in the straight line, bend on the halfway line, and then curve in. And from that, you know, I learned how to beat the offside trap. And it's funny, I got to see him a couple of years before he died, and I went up to him and said, Martin, thanks very much for that bit of information you gave me all them years ago. It sticks in my head today, you know. So it was great being at a club like West Ham, because we played football. Ron made sure we played football. He had no time for people that would just get the ball and punt it right up the middle. He wanted you to play your way out. So from that point of view, I'm glad that I had the opportunity to play for West Ham United, because it taught us all the basics and all the fundamentals of the game and the way it should be played.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is what, you know, a lot of fans, what, you know, that team did under Ron Greenwood, we still refer to as the West Ham way, and fans still revere and want to see us play. So, you know, Ron Greenwood and his way of playing, I think it's the legacy speaks for itself.
It does. When you look at all the people that came through the club, all the people that went on to coach, it was because of being associated with a person like Ron Greenwood and John Lyall, you know. And as I said, at 17, 18, you know, we could do the basics as good as most people that played at Premier League clubs and First Division clubs, because that's the way they brought us up. I remember one day we played Tottenham Hotspur at our place at Upton Park, and we beat them 2-1. And the average age of the team was under 19 years old. And Bill Nickerson came in to the dressing room at halftime, and he said, this is the best group of 19, 18-year-olds I've seen in my life. The way you played one touch and two touch, but that's the way we practice. We played in the gym, and he always told us, if you play in your front room, you got to be able to control the ball. Yeah. And I believe that up until this day, you know, if you know how to master the little pigskin, you're going to be okay.
And that game, I believe, is historic for multiple reasons. I believe that's the game that had the first game to have 3 black players filled in the same team, yourself, along with Adi Coker and Clyde Charles. Yeah. You know, what did that mean for you at the time? You know, like you said, you're sort of coming over to this country, you know, it's predominantly white, you know, you kind of feel it's a bit of a fish out of the water, and you're going through this experience, but to experience such an amazing game, not just, you know, with a young team, but with Adi and Clive, you know, what was that like for you? And to win against, you know, Tottenham?
Well, it was great, really. Number one, it was Tottenham, and that's our neighbors, so it was great to beat them, especially on that day, because we knew we were making history, because we probably discussed it between ourselves at the time that, hey, you know, this is the first time something like this is happening. And we had to make sure and go out and to perform at a very high standard. Clyde was a brilliant left back, had a sweet left foot. Eddie was a little buzzy bee. He'd be all over the place, had good technique, good skill. I mean, I think he's one of the first players I ever seen do the Johan Cruyff move. Wow. And they were buzzing in, at the 74 World Cup. But Eddie had done that at Crystal Palace in his first game. You know? So we've got a few firsts on a few things that people don't know about. You know, yeah. But as I said, it was great to be able to do that at such a young age. And, you know, I'm glad that the Lord picked us to be able to do it, because, you know, we done it very well and we represented very well.
Did you feel that history at the time that you were making? Did you feel like it to know that, okay, you know, there's 3 of us are in this now, and like no other teams have done this?
We knew that one day it would be talked about, because it never been done before, and we're talking about it today. Yeah. So, you know, that tells you that's what history's all about, doing something that someone has never done before for the first time, and that's how you evolve and get history. So, you know, hey, I'm glad, as I said, I was able to be part of it and be one of the first ones. I mean, it's funny, when Cyril was living, Cyril Regis, and him and I were good friends, and I spoke to him, I said, I don't know who told you about the 3 degrees, but you might be the 3 degrees, but you weren't the first. I told him we're the first 3 players to be played. So, you know, but he would laugh at it, you know, and he understood that and he knew, you know. So you can't blame them for that. You know, that's just the fans and the new type of media we have, you know, that gets all this stuff out there. So, but we know deep down inside who were the first 3 black players to play at the same time. In England.
Yeah, and it's a distinction, you know, we'll always have and we'll always cherish, for sure.
Well, that's the importance of history. If you're doing something and doing something different, they can never take it away from you. You know, and I was glad to be a part of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'd like to talk a bit about your time at the academy, coming over and training, because the academy had been started up by Ted Fenton a little over 10 years before you joined. So it's not, you know, it hadn't been going tremendously long. So you can tell me about your experiences of the academy. We was talking about you got to visit the training facilities at West Ham today. What was it like for you then, experience of coming through the academy?
Well, it definitely wasn't like it is today. You know, I mean, we didn't have those sort of facilities. We were all young. A lot of our stuff was done. We had a little gym in the back where the fans used to be on match days, and we would play a lot of football in there, especially in the winter time. And you played a lot of 1-touch, 2-touch. You have to have good technique, and playing in those little small and confined areas helped to develop that, you know. So John and Ron, you know, made us play a lot of indoor soccer, especially in the wintertime. When the snow was on the ground, we'd go to a gym at Harlow and play up at there. Now we probably got a place at like Chadwell Heath where they can go indoors and train because it's covered, you know, but change is good. And you see what we have now. For those fans that are moaning and say it should be better, be thankful for what we had, because it's a lot better now than it was.
Yeah.
when we came along and people before us came along. When I look at things around the club and the facilities, players should never complain, because when you see what they had versus what people like myself and people long before me had, hey, you guys are way ahead of the ball. So, hey, just go out and enjoy your soccer, do what you can, make the fans and the club proud of you, because you got everything at your disposal.
Absolutely. And who were some of the players that you got to play with in the academy that you could sort of see then, you know, that he's going to be good. He's that player's going to make it.
Well, the ones that came through of my group was Patsy Holland, Johnny McDowell, myself, Peter Gruder, you played a few games, Clive Charles. So, you know, that's about 4 or 5. I think if you get that many people coming through your academy every couple of years, you're going to be okay. Because, I mean, it's like our youth team now. They won the FA Youth Cup.
Yeah, I was there.
You should be finding a way to feed some of them players into the first team, because if they're good enough at this level, they've got to be good enough at the higher level, because they won the FA Youth Cup. And that's unbelievable. And to be the team like Arsenal, what we did, that's unbelievable.
5-1.
Those guys should be really proud of themselves and hold their heads high and, hey, let's look for bigger and better things, and let the first team players know, I'm coming looking for your place. And that's what competition is all about. And it makes us a better club. You know, if we get good kids coming and can go right into the first team, you don't have to spend money on big players like, you know, we've had over the last couple of years.
And it's something the fans have always prided ourselves on, bringing through players. We love to see it. We've had the name the Academy of Football, you know, that stretches back to the Ron Greenwood era and things like that. So you're right.
I think it goes back, you want to see young. You know, you don't, I mean, it's like the fans. They don't support any other team. They elect to support West Ham United, not Tottenham, who's up the street, or Arsenal, you know, or Chelsea. They're strictly West Ham. And, you know, playing for the club, as I said, it's a privilege and an honor, and to make the fans happy. That's what it's all about, you know, because they pay money to see us play, and that money helps to pay our wages. So the players have to realize that, and without the fans, there's no game, because there's nothing worse than playing in the stand where there's not many people, or a stadium where there's not lots of people. We should be proud of what we've done and what we have, because last night, I couldn't believe it. The atmosphere was unbelievable. And I had my 2 nephews with me, and I said to them, if you cannot play in this environment, you can't play nowhere. Tell the Lord just to tell you, you know, stop playing or something like that, because it was brilliant. And hey, I would have loved to have had that sort of atmosphere, and being able to go in and please the fans and keep them happy. Because if the fans are happy, I'm going to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you know, talking about you coming through that academy, we got to talk about your debut. I believe we got a draw against Arsenal.
Yes.
What was that like for you, debuting for West Ham? You know, the club that you, like you said, you was emulating the, you know, our players. You got to see, you know, the World Cup, and then to come and actually make your debut against, you know, a big team like Arsenal. How was that?
Well, it was unbelievable. I'll never forget it. It was, I don't know if it was a Monday or Tuesday. I went into training, and I'm getting ready to train with the other players and everything. And Ron pulled me aside, and he said, hey, go home and get some rest. You're playing tonight. I said, what? I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was an unbelievable experience. And I went home and got a few hours kip and got ready and prepared myself for the game that night. And I think it was myself and Roger Cross who started from the lower teams, and we ended up playing Arsenal, and we drew with them. I think it was 2-2, I think. And I think Roger scored one of the goals, one of his first goals, you know. So he was over the moon, and I was over the moon as well, because to be able to break into the first team and get a start, it was unbelievable. And, you know, that's what you always wanted. That's what you dreamt about. And it came to forefront, and hey, you just got to go out there and perform. And I was able to do that for a little while, and then eventually, you got your own number and your own jersey, so to speak, and that was an unbelievable period, and it's something that I will never forget. And I would always be indebted to West Ham United because they gave me my chance, and I really appreciate that.
And it wasn't that much later you got your first goal for West Ham, I believe it was against Burnley, was it? And getting that first goal, as a striker, how did you feel afterwards? What describe the emotions at the time, and then that night it must have been hard to sleep after that.
Well, it's brilliant when you score your first goal because as a striker, that's your responsibility, and you understand that, and the more goals you score, the better team you're going to have. You're going to take weight off of other players that you're playing with, because Geoff, our main supplier at that time, was Geoff. He was, having to score all the goals, and when I came along, it was nice to be able to, help him to put the ball in the net, and as I said, we had fantastic players as well that could deliver good balls to you. So lots of times you were had stuff laid on the plate for you. So, a person like Trevor, who was a treat to play with, I mean, he knew your runs, he knew how to wait the pass and everything, and practically everybody in the team understood that, and because that's the way we're brought up, to play neat pass and attacking football, and that's what we done. And as I say, it was a dream to be a part of it,
And you touched on something there I wanted to ask you about, being able to support and supply Geoff. You scored, I believe, around 58 goals for West Ham. But back then, assists weren't really talked about like they were today. Assists are such a big part of the game. We look at players and we go, well, he's got this many goals and this many assists, and you got to, and we use that as a way to, part of the stats, what a great player. But, people don't realize, how much of an unselfish player he was and created the goals. And, for you, if you look at it back then, the amount of assists that you got, I mean, you probably don't have the number, but what do you think about the change in how we look at the game now and looking at assists as counting them as much as almost important as goals?
Well, I think that's important. I first learned about assists going to play in the North American Soccer League.
Wow.
Because they count everything in every sport that they play. And we were over there playing in Tampa, Florida, and you hear the man say, so-and-so scored a goal and this person made the assist. And from then, I said to myself, hey, this makes sense, because you can't score a goal without someone making it for you, unless you do something brilliant and you go through by yourself. But most times, most strikers, have to have people making chances for them and create chances for them where they can stick the ball away. So I enjoyed getting assists, even though we never counted it. I was always brought up, if a person's in a better position than me, give the ball. And to me, it was no better running on the left-hand side, coming inside and just sliding it inside to Geoff so he could stick it in, or whoever it was that could stick it in. I mean, if you look at Trevor Brooke, and Trevor was a brilliant assist player. He'll get down the left-hand side and he'll sell you a dummy and come back. And when you look, he'll clip a low ball in the middle for someone to either rise up like a swordfish and head it in, So, all that is very, very important. And I think most players that get to that level can do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, someone out there has got to retrospectively go and find out how many assists that you got. Yeah. I would be really interested to see it, because I think it's, like you said, it's such an important part of the game. It's a lot of the time, the harder work is the big assist, and then the striker comes in and taps it in or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's, as I said, it's part and parcel of the game. I mean, if a person is in a better position, rather than not have a goal, it's better just to slide it inside and give him a tap in, and that's what it's all about, and you feel good because you've done your bit, especially if you're gone or you run across one or two people and then you just square it to the person that makes it better.
So you talked a bit about, some goals where, you sort of make it yourself. I've got to talk to you about the 3-0 win over Man United, which you scored that great goal from distance and almost reminiscent of Ben Rama's goal we saw yesterday, even against Man United. But, talk to me about that game. Manchester United, some of the legendary players that he was playing against. It was like George Best, Bobby Charlton, Banks in goal. There were some legendary players. And what a result. I mean, West Ham, we dominated.
Well, I always had it in my mind, Manchester United, George Best and Clyde Best. You knew that it was going to be competition against one another. And I got to know George pretty good over the years, and we had a good relationship. He'll come down to London sometimes, we'll meet up and have a good talk, good conversation. And we always said, I told him, George, when we go to Old Trafford, that's your place. When you come to Upton Park, that's my place. And I will show you what I can do.
And you did.
And lucky enough, I was able to. And that's being confident and not being afraid of the competition that you played against. I mean, George Best, Pele, all those people, when I played against them, I made sure that they were going to leave the pitch wondering who this little guy from Bermuda was. And I was able to do that. I mean, with Pele, every time I played against him, I made sure I scored.
Yeah.
And that was always my intentions. And I will never forget the time we played him in Randall's Island with West Ham. And Pele scored 2, I scored 2. And he came up to me after the game, he said, Clyde, you're the king, I'm the king, you're the prince. I said, coming from you, I don't have a problem with that take.
Wow, that is amazing. And, just back on that goal, from what you can remember, against Manchester United, shooting from there, you remember what was going through your mind for, okay, right, it's on here. I'm going to have a go here.
Well, I was always a person that if I saw the goal and they were backing off, I'm going to let fly because I knew I had a good, powerful shot. And to me, I had enough people to emulate. And so I used to watch Bobby Charlton strike him. I seen Geoff hit him from outside, Martin. So, hey, why not try? If I see it and it's there, let fly. And Ernie Griggy always told us, if you don't shoot, you don't score. You see the goalkeeper, you knock him over. And I believed in that. And every time I saw the goal and had a chance to shoot, I like to shoot. And it's nothing to me better in football than seeing something go from 30 yards, 20 yards out, and you hit a crack and the goalkeeper is dying for fresh air. So I used to love to do that.
Fantastic. And I've got to ask you about Bobby Moore, playing with him, obviously a captain of the club, icon in this country. How important was Bobby Moore for you, as a captain and, someone that you played with and, when you was coming over, especially as a young player and he's the more senior player?
I address Bobby every time I speak about him as one of the best human beings I've ever met in my life. This man was so down to earth, so nice and warm and welcoming that you could not do anything else but applaud him because he's the best human being I've ever met. And for me, he was brilliant because we would sit down and talk sometimes. Bobby had an agent and I had the same person. And we would go in Jack Turner's office and sit down and discuss the game plan for the Saturday, wherever we were playing. And that's something I would always be indebted to him for, because he always would pat you on your shoulder, regardless what you done. Come on, let's go. We got a job to do. And he was brilliant. And as I said, I love him like a brother because he was a fantastic, and practically all the guys at West Ham during their time were fantastic people. And Bobby Hall was a good friend of mine, and some nights he would take me down his house with him. He had just gotten married, and I would say, Bobby, you don't want me around your house and Carol's house. You just got married. Come on, let's go in. That's the sort of friendships we had, and as I said, it was nice to see all the guys the other day. I think it was Wednesday at Rob's old clinic, and we went to the bowling and we sat down and talked and discussed old times. And you can't beat that, because the guys are still the same people that I left all them years ago.
Yeah.
Kind, warm, and decent human beings.
And speaking of that, I mean, we got to talk about Ron Greenwood. You touched on him, but being such a young man coming over and having someone like Ron Greenwood there, how important was he for you?
Yeah, he was good for me. Brilliant, really, because Ron saw the talent. I mean, Harry was telling me the other day, he never forgot. They were finishing training, so Ron made a lot of them, look, I want you to stay and watch this guy shoot. And he couldn't believe a young person could hit the target so many times. And Harry said that they all stood and looked. And somebody crossed the ball and I brought it down on my chest and hit it before it hit the ground and it flew in the net. So Harry said, they all said, oh, he's special. We got somebody there now that can play, you know what I mean? So it was nice to hear that coming from the guys. I was just doing what I would customarily do, because when I was a young kid, I would, at home, me and my friend from school would get a bag of balls and go down to the naval field where the British Navy ships used to come, and they would play on the same field. And we would play with them and against them. And that's how we learned to take knocks at such a young age. We were playing against the men when we were 12 years old, Coming to England, playing against Met Police and the big guys wasn't a problem for me, because being a big person myself, I was able to take the knocks, and they were amazed at it, all the stuff,
And what was John Lyall like? Because a lot of fans grew up with him as a manager and revere him as a manager, but just as a coach, obviously, learning under Greenwood, he would eventually, succeed him. What's your memories of John Lyall just as a coach?
Well, John was brilliant, and as you said, a lot of the stuff he probably, learned working with Ron over them years, and he had the youth team players, and a lot of the information that they gave us was a lot of the information that the first team players probably had. So it was something that they probably had discussed and planned, and they always told us that football is a simple game that is complicated by people lots of times. And if you play the game simply, it's going to be a better game for you. One touch, two touch.
Yeah.
If you have to beat somebody in the corner, that's okay. But when you're building up, let's have nice, neat, crisp passing. And I think all of us will always remember that stuff from other guys, because that's the way they taught us. And John was brilliant. He got us back up to where we are now. And, he was a great, great guy. And, all of them. I mean, him, Ernie, Gregory, Ron, they all taught us to play the game the right way. And anybody that complains and said West Ham wasn't a club to teach the team the right way to play, I think I would smack a few of them myself, because we were real blessed and fortunate to be brought up and play at a club like West Ham, because as you said, nobody does it better than us, the West Ham way. Nobody could, because it was brilliant, and it was a simple, basic game, and that's the way we played it.
Absolutely, and look, there's so many great memories. Like you said, great people that you got to meet and were warm and welcoming. But I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about a lot of what you had to endure. As a young black man coming over in the game. The racism and things like that, and people realize being that young. It must have been tremendously difficult at the time, especially in the early days, being 17 years old.
Well, what I found coming over as a young guy, it was good because I was able to be with a lot of my peers, guys my age in the West Ham club and stuff like that. Racism in our club wasn't a word that we used. You know, we were all footballers and we all played. All the racism stuff started when you went away to play away from home. And I'll never forget one day we played at Everton and they started the chants and whoo, whoo, whoo. You knew it. I said to Billy or Frank, I said, hey, that's for me. When you get the ball, give it to me. I'm going to silence this crowd myself.
Wow.
And Billy slid me in. I had a boy named Terry Derricott. He was marking me. And I give him a dummy, and he took it, and I'm gone. He was holding on to my shirt. And I took him to the half line, from the half line all the way to the goal. And as the goalkeeper came out, I just dropped my shoulder. He went down, and I just over the top of his head.
Yeah.
And the crowd were ecstatic. They didn't do anything else about the monkey chants. They just were silenced because they'd never seen nothing like that before at Everton. And Joe Royal came to me after the game. He said, Clyde, that is the best goal I've ever seen scored at Everton. And I found out that doing stuff like that when you're playing away from home, that silenced the crowd. And the way to do it is to put the ball in the back of the net. And that keeps them quiet.
Do you remember the celebration after you scored at that game?
I know it was, I ran all around and probably went to the crowd, and, you know, because I used to like doing that sort of stuff, you know, and it's nothing better, you know, and I felt sorry for the boys when they played for England the other day that got slaughtered when they missed the penalties.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of stuff. It's, you know, you would have thought that it would have been out of the way, but it's not because of, you know, there's still some crazy people out there. And as I always say in my conversations with people, you know, the most important part of football is playing with a pigskin. If the pigskin doesn't know what color you are, don't worry about what the other people are saying, because that's the most important part of the game, playing with a football. And the football ain't gonna call you names or anything like that. So just get out there, use it to the best of your ability. And if you do that and you're doing the right thing, that will change the mind. And that's the way I went about my career. It was hard, but you couldn't let the people beat you up and beat you down. You know, you gotta be strong and remember that after you, it's somebody else gonna be coming, and they're gonna have to probably go through the same thing. So you want to try and make it better for them and make people understand that, hey, don't judge me by the color of my skin. Judge me by what I do on the football field.
And, you know, you spoke about, like you said, what the lads got after missing the penalties. And your thoughts on today, like how different it is, because obviously what you experienced back in the day, it was widespread, but it was direct, it was visceral, people was shouting it at you. Today we have technology, social media, where anyone can send you a message anonymously, you know, and there's just so many people. I mean, what do you think about the differences between how the sort of racism that players experience now versus sort of in your time?
Well, that is the problem with it today, is that the social media and everything, you know, it's a lot easier to get at the players. I mean, it's not just on the football field, it's in life in general. I mean, you look and see what's going on in the world today. If one of the big politicians from a country doesn't like what's going on, they get on social media and they blast it so everybody gets to see it. And that's what I think makes it a lot more tougher for players today, is because of this social media.
And, you know, when it comes to West Ham, like you said, you know, so you sort of was a trailblazer at the time, because television becomes such a big part of football at that time. There was a big transition. It was on television where there were black players before, like you said, we had John Charles. But then it was, you know, you became a sort of a big figure because, you know, you was a black player who was a striker, scoring goals for the team. So it sort of put you on a big platform then at the time. How was that, dealing with that sort of the whole television stuff? And like you said, you're dealing with the racism. was it reported on, or did you start to experience more in the street because you was now elevated to this platform?
Well, never really in the street. You know, you might get someone send you a letter, you know, a bad letter or a bad note or something like that.
Yeah.
And you just have to ignore it because
you said about the one with the acid, wasn't it? You got a letter where someone threatened
to throw acid in my
if you turned up.
I came through the tunnel. Yeah. And, you know, my thing was that, hey, remember, you're not playing for yourself. You're playing for all the fans and you're playing for the people coming after you. So when I look and see what's happening now in football, you know deep down inside you had a lot to do with what's going on now. Yeah. Because it could have so easily been the other way, where guys are saying, hey, I'm not going to play because I'm afraid to go out there because they might taunt me or give me bad chance where I wouldn't be able to handle it. But when I look and see what's going on in football right now, it's unbelievable because I think you got more black guys playing than white guys. You know? And that's a big turnaround from what it was when I first started. So, you know, hey, you should never judge a person by the color of the skin in no circumstances because, hey, we're all human beings. We all deserve a chance and we all deserve to do what we have to do to make the world a better place. And if anything that I done has done that, that means I've done my job. I can ease on out of town and say, hey, I've done what I had to do.
I think you definitely helped pave the way for those players. But I think also, I don't know if you realise this, but obviously you was beloved by fans from all backgrounds, you know, white fans. But you also helped bring a lot of black fans to West Ham and expand our fan base. I saw Chris Akabusi, who's world champion in athletics in his country, also an MBE, said that he was a Liverpool fan as a kid, you know, as like the big team. And then when he saw you at West Ham, he immediately said, that's my team. And he's been a diehard West Ham fan ever since. And I think there was a lot of people with similar stories.
Well, that's nice to know. I think the more diverse people we have on the stands and chanting for the team, it's the better because not one race of people have the right to say, hey, that's my team and nobody else's team. So, hey, yesterday it was nice to see, I saw people from Chinese, Japanese, Indians, you know, white people, black people. So that's 5 different types of nationalities of people at one game. That's a fantastic thing to have happened. I even met a guy in the hotel here. He told me he's from Australia. He just came here for this game, you know. So if we can do stuff like that, that means that we're doing something right. And I just hope that we continue to do what we're doing and make the game a better game and a better place for everybody.
And that is the beauty of football, all these different backgrounds, that's but we're all connected with that same emotion. When that ball hit the back of the net,
that's right. Everybody's happy. And that's the beauty of the game. And that's why the master Pele always called it the beautiful game. Because you look, I remember once he was telling me that Santos were on a world tour somewhere and they went to this part of Africa where they were at war. Football actually stopped the war because they put the guns down to go and watch Santos play. So that's the beauty of the game. And as I said, it is a beautiful game. And hey, if you got a way of mastering some part of it to make it better, that's what it's all about. You know?
Absolutely. Before I end with some quick fire questions, I said I'd go into a little bit more about the Charles family. You know, did John Charles, who was playing for us, was he able to sort of give you any advice? You obviously him as one of the first black players playing for West Ham. You know, how important was he as a figure, as that senior figure? And did he sort of give you any forewarning or advice about dealing with the racism? And just as well, tell me a bit more about just memories of staying with the Charles family.
Yeah, John was brilliant in a sense. On Friday, everybody met at, we used to call her Big J. She was a little small lady. And we would go have a cup of teas at her house, practically after training on Fridays. And we'll sit down and discuss, look, you're playing against this team today. This is what you got to be looking out for. look at this person, see what they're doing and stuff like that. So he played a very important part in my development, Clyde's development, because he had been there before us and he knew, how to handle certain types of players. He was a right fullback, hard as nails. He would kick you if you had to be kicked. And, he helped us tremendously in our game and our development, So, hey, I would always be indebted to John because he was not only a good footballer, he was a good person.
And just some quick fire questions. Do you have a favourite goal that you've scored?
I have two goals that I remember. The first one, Gordon Banks, Peter Shilton. I always, you heard how great these guys were as goalkeepers, and they were that brilliant. But to score against Gordon, and I'm not sure if I got one against Peter. I think so, one day at Leicester. And to score against them too, that's what really made it special, because you're talking about the best goalkeeper in the world, which Gordon Banks was at that time. And we played him in a League Cup. I have to apologize to the people for West Ham for that League Cup, because I had a guy the other day that we were interviewing, and he told me, he said, "Clyde, I love you to death, but I haven't forgot what happened that night in Manchester when I refused to go and goal, and Bobby had to go and goal, because my rationale was, hey, I can't let the fans down by going and goal and having a crappy game." Yeah. I had played a few days before against Leeds and ended up 0-0. It might have been 1-1 or 0-0. So they probably thought, because they saw me do it that day, that I could go in again and do the same thing. But you're talking about the semifinal of the League Cup. Yeah. You're one step away. And, it was unfortunate. Fergie got injured and Bobby had to go in. And we ended up losing that game. But to all the West Ham fans, I'm sorry. I apologize. And, hey, but I would do it all over again. And as I said, the goal that I remember was when we played Stoke that night at Stoke City's ground. And Harry went to the byline and crossed this unbelievable thing. And Harry was a great crosser of the ball. I mean, he can do it at quick bases. Everybody talks about David Beckham, but Harry, hey, he was an unbelievable crosser. And he crossed this thing over, and I must have been just outside the 6-yard box. And I said, hey, it's only one thing to do, is let fly. And I hit this thing. I think if Gordon would have gotten a touch of it, probably would have hurt him, because I hit it with full venom, and the ball flew into the net. And that was one goal that I always appreciated. Another one would have been against Leeds, one Good Friday. I think we beat them something like 4-1. And I picked this thing up from the half line and made a run towards goal. And I had to go through people like Billy Bremen and Johnny Giles. They were kicking. And I'll never forget the coach from Leeds who was on the sideline, Les Cocker. And he was just yelling, kick the big back, big, kick me. Wow. And I'm going through. And as Gary Spray came, I just slid the thing underneath of him, but the run from the half line was the one that really stuck out, being able to go through Norman Hunt and all them and slid it in the net. And I think I got 2 that day as well. But I think that would be the best 2 for me that I really enjoyed,
And best player that you played with? You say that's a tough one with some of the players that you played with.
I've played with some best players. I'm probably going to have to name a few. I had the pleasure of playing with Bobby Moore, who for me was one of the best sweepers, defenders in the world. So definitely he was one. Obviously the King, Pele, is another one. Yeah. And another one would be Johan Cruyff, and he was brilliant. I mean, this man, he was like, he had rubber legs, He would go through you. So that'd be 3. There have been numerous great players. Robbie Ransombrink was another one. Played with me in Portland. He was from Holland and played for Anderlecht. As a matter of fact, we played against him when we were in the UEFA Cup years ago, and I think he was playing for Anderlecht, and he was a brilliant player, left winger. As I said, Geoff Hurst, unbelievable striker. Martin Peters, fantastic midfielder. Trevor Brooklyn, Boog, he would drop that shoulder. You watch him play. He was so nonchalant, not quickest person, but when he shook that body, you never knew which way you're going to go because he'll make you look crazy, you know what I mean? And Billy Bonds would probably be on my first team sheet because of the enthusiasm and the work rate, and for a lot of people could learn to emulate what they saw Billy Bonds do. They would have a greater appreciation for the guy because he would be one of the first players on my team sheet because of his energy. And he never said die. He would just run all and every day, So I've been fortunate, you got people like Bobby Charlton, I never thought, Dennis Law, George Best, Rodney Marsh, these are all fantastic. Jimmy Greaves, Ellen Gilzine. To be able to have played in the same company as all these stars, it makes me feel good because here's a little guy coming from Bermuda. Well, I wouldn't say a little guy, big guy, coming from Bermuda at a very, very young age. And then being able to play on the same platform as all those guys. Hey, I'm still over the moon today, and I pleased and thank all those players because I couldn't do it by myself, So it was a pleasure to play with them and against them, Franz Beckenbauer, Johan Leachkins, all the greats. And when they talk about the GOATs today, okay, you keep your GOATs in your time, but we had GOATs and mountain goats in our time, and they were brilliant. I mean, if you call out the names of the players, and what would you pay them today if they were playing? You don't know.
And the transfer fees
that's
that
right.
they would have gone for.
You look at Manchester United, I tell people all the time, the centre-half, they paid 80 million for him. Well, you have to pay 160 for Bobby Moore or Franz Beckenbauer. That's what you have to pay for them. That's how good these guys were. And the game was so easy to them. I mean, it's amazing, and I'm just glad and happy to have had an opportunity to play with them and against these sort of people.
And listen, your legacy itself speaks for itself. It's, remembered by the West Ham fans, but also, I think how important your legacy is for Bermuda. Getting that MBE must have meant so much to the people of Bermuda to see what you was able to do here in England in the English game as a Bermudan, and then get recognised, and that must have been an amazing experience for yourself and achievement, and for the Bermudan people. Yeah,
I'm sure there was. We are very laid-back people. We come from an island where, we take things in the stride, and we don't fuss and talk much about achievements and stuff like that. You just do what you have to do and, go on to the next page, and as I said, it's in the history's book, so, it'll always be there. And that's what life is all about, and that's what's important, and if I made my people of Bermuda proud, which I'm sure I did, hey, thank you for giving me an opportunity in a little country like that and letting me play football and cricket in that little country and bring it overseas to show that, hey, even though we're a small island, we can pack a big punch, because the size of the country that you come from doesn't make you a soccer player. You make yourself a soccer player.
And hopefully one day a young Bermudan player follows in your footsteps and plays in West Ham.
Well, I try to, if I send kids over, and I want all the world to know that Tottenham and Arsenal fans, if I got anything to do, West Ham is the first stop. They're not going anywhere else.
That's it.
They have to come here first. Yeah.
Great to hear. I'm sure a lot of West Ham fans will be happy to hear. But honestly, Clyde, I could talk to you for hours and hours, but you've got a documentary coming out and we've got to save some stuff for the documentary. Can you just, before we go, tell us a bit about the documentary that's currently being made right now?
Well, we're working with it. My friend Dan over there, he's the man responsible for it. He went to school with my nephew years ago in Maine, and they got talking one time probably about me and my career, and he came up with the idea, well, that's great for a documentary. And we decided to start it, and we're at a stage now where we're not going to turn back. And I think it's important that we get stuff like this out there and keep it on film for the next lot of people coming up. So that's what we're trying to do, and we've had great help from people here this side, and we're still working on it, and hopefully it's able to come. Hopefully next year we're able to finish our goal. He was very happy, Dan, yesterday to tell me with what went on yesterday with all the pictures and everything that they got. So that's a win-win bonus for us. And as you said, hopefully, we can keep it in the archives for West Ham for the young kids coming up and the ones that are after us, because what happens lots of times, if you let your history go to waste, everything else goes to waste, so you got to keep your history. So I'm just glad and pleased that, hey, I don't know why he picked me, the Lord, but to send me all that way that many years ago here to England and see what's going on today, and they're still talking about it. I think that's great. So the more we get that out in the world, I think the better it's going to be for everybody.
I think you're right. And the things we've talked about today, obviously, are going to be going in more detail. There's archive footage. That's right. So it'll be filming around East End. And, for West Ham fans, it's going to be an absolute treat. But for football fans as well, all the things we spoke about of what you came through, dealt with, just seeing that is going to be eye-opening. So it's big. And I believe what I'm going to do is put a link down below. If you want to support it, there's still a lot of work to be done. Still looking for any support people can do. If they, you want to donate some money to help this film be finished, there will be a link. Any support would be great.
Well, we really will appreciate that. And as I said, hey, if it's going to make the game better, if it's going to make my club a better club, that's what I'm for. And as I say, I'm born a Hammer and I'll die a Hammer. I tell people all the time, I pray in my bed some nights when West Ham are played, ask the Lord to please let us win. And look, he gave me a win yesterday. So that tells me something is right up top when we're doing that sort of stuff. So he knows what we have to do and what we got to do. And look, we've done it. We survived. So, I'm thankful for that. And as I say, this club, I'm here in my heart and would always be there. So I'm a Hammer through and through.
That's fantastic. That's I can't think of a better way to end it there. So thank you so much, Clyde, and I can't wait to see this documentary. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Honor.